This weekend before last, President Donald Trump and United States Attorney General William Barr fired Geoffrey Berman, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. The dismissal was dramatic. Barr announced Berman was fired Friday night, but Berman refused to step down, forcing Trump to fire the U.S. Attorney the next day. Now, here to break down what the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney does and why many are extremely concerned by Berman's dismissal, saying the firing is an assault on America's justice system, is Spar Bernstein's very own civil rights and litigation attorney, former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney, David Moreno.
Hey.
David, as a former Manhattan District Attorney, please enlighten us. And by the way, congratulations to you. Not that we condone what your client was doing, but David this week had a client who was looking at 40 years in jail, and he is now time served and done. Correct?
Yeah. What district that was in, Brad?
Southern District.
Southern District of New York.
Yeah.
That's a great segue into the question you just asked.
So what does the U.S. Attorney do, and why is the Southern District so important?
So the U.S. Attorney's Office prosecutes both high-level civil, complex civil litigations, as well as high-level federal crimes. The Southern District specifically spans over the region of Manhattan, the Bronx, Westchester, and the other counties right above Westchester. One of the reasons why the Southern District is so important, historically has been so important, is because obviously Wall Street and the financial district fall within the Southern District of New York. Many of their very, very high-profile prosecutions have led to some of the highest forfeiture amounts in the history of the United States. And with great money comes great power. That is a prestige and prime position. It's probably the most important law enforcement agency in the whole world.
So, for example, Madoff was, everyone knows who Bernie Madoff was. He went through the Southern District, right?
Correct.
Right.
Madoff went through the Southern District. Jeffrey Epstein was in custody of Southern District.
Chapo?
Chapo, ironically, was Eastern District.
He was Eastern District, okay.
A big surprise. They housed him in D.C., which is in the Southern District.
Right.
But just the fact that Chapo was Eastern District, it goes to show you how powerful the federal prosecutors are here in New York. Chapo never stepped foot in this country, and the Eastern District went after him. It actually was surprising that Eastern District got that high profile of a case because obviously, historically, those cases have gone to the Southern District.
So now there was a big thing because the Southern District was investigating a lot of Trump cronies. Okay. But before we get into that, who appoints the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District?
I'll take president for 500, Alex.
So apparently now, if the president appoints the U.S. Attorney, they can, I guess, by tradition, also be fired by the president. Why was this so unusual that Berman was refusing to leave?
So the way it works in procedure is the U.S. Attorney is a position that's appointed by the president, and almost always, unequivocally, that U.S. Attorney will be in office for the 4 years or 8 years consistent with the term of the president. There are times when U.S. attorneys are particularly great at their jobs where they stay longer than the term of the president that appoints them. When there's a change in the political parties, meaning we go from a Democratic presidency to a Republican presidency, almost always unequivocally, the opposing party will want to appoint a U.S. attorney that is from their party, a representative of their party. So what they would normally do is, rather than fire the U.S. attorney, they will ask him to professionally step down so that the new incumbent president can appoint their own candidate as the U.S. attorney. This situation was weird and raised a lot of eyebrows because obviously the election is not till November. There's been a lot of heat on the Trump camp, and there have been a number of connected individuals to President Trump that have been either prosecuted, indicted, or were being investigated by the Southern District of New York.
Now, here's a hypothesis. Berman was coming after Trump and his comrades. What do you think of that?
I think that Berman was doing his job, right? The most important cog in the criminal justice system that we have.
So why was Trump so nervous that he had to get rid of Berman on a Friday night? Why do you think this?
Why does anybody release a news story in the middle of the night?
They don't want anyone to know.
Correct.
The Southern District, they issued a grand jury indictment against Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman, who was associates with Giuliani being Trump's attorney. Do you think something was going on there?
I'm not one to speculate, but I have on, good research authority and looking at all of the outstanding facts, it's pretty clear to me that this action was not based on any discretion that Mr. Berman had or, a reflection of his work, but was rather a way to get him out of office before he uncovered anything that could be potentially hurtful to the White House or to the president himself.
Now, according to the new book by Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, The Room Where It Happened, Berman oversaw an investigation into Turkish bank Halkbank. A probe Bolton claims Trump promised Turkish President Erdogan would be fixed. What do you think of that?
Well, all of this stuff,
I mean, you're a former district attorney. You were doing this for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. What do you think is going on? You're not the insider, but you've done this.
Yeah, and I've worked on a number of cases when I was a prosecutor that overlapped with the Southern District on assignment. The way that the Southern District operates and the way that most U.S. attorneys operate, and I always tell my clients this, when you get arrested by the feds, it's not, hey, Brad, I saw you doing something wrong. It's, hey, Brad, I've been watching you for about 3 years, and I knew you were going to do something wrong, and now I have all the evidence that shows exactly what you did. So they do their homework.
So if they are prosecuting somebody, they already got the goods on you.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. They're not a reactionary office. They are a very proactive office. They work very closely with a number of informants. The feds do not make a case without someone involved cooperating. So generally, once they get you, they've got you.
So it's not like he's concerned, they're going to start an investigation. I wonder what they'll find. No. When the feds are they're there already.
Correct.
Now, last week, a former prosecutor testified to the House Judiciary Committee that the Justice Department gave Roger Stone unprecedentedly favorable treatment because he's an ally of President Trump. How much does politics weigh on prosecutors?
It shouldn't play any role, but I've seen it happen time and time again. I don't know if anybody on the Brad Squad or if you watched the Epstein documentary on Netflix.
I'll be honest with you. I started to watch it. I thought it was so disgusting what he was doing that I couldn't watch it anymore. I watched about 45 minutes because I was interested, and I'm like, this is so disgusting, I can't even watch it.
Yeah, it's insane the level of what this man got away with. But they did go into on the second episode when they were actually honing in on him, and they actually had him on a number of rapes and sexual assaults on minors, that there was pressure from the Southern District of Florida's U.S. attorney to not prosecute Mr. Epstein and that work out a plea that was going to be favorable. Because, unfortunately in this country, the financial industry does have great influence on what happens in a lot of offices. And if you have corrupt individuals, at the helm of the most powerful positions, then they will be able to be swayed by their political aspirations and their party and political allegiances.
A 3-judge panel for the Circuit Court of Appeals ordered District Judge Emmett Sullivan to accept Justice Department's motion to dismiss the case against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. He had already pled guilty, and then William Barr had the U.S. Attorney's Office or the Justice Department come in and make a motion to say, even though the U.S. attorneys got him to plead guilty, we want to drop this case. You ever hear of such a thing?
No, this is one of the grossest abuses of power that I've ever seen. The man has already gone in open court, not only he also allocated to the actual conduct that he did that was illegal. And after he did that, for the case to be dismissed is not something I've ever encountered, either as an attorney, a commentator, or someone just close to the law.
Now, what about the person that Trump and Barr originally wanted to replace Berman with? He is now being replaced by Audrey Strauss, who was Berman's assistant. But originally they wanted Jay Clayton, who is the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, to be the Southern District Attorney. What's up with that? That
is obviously Jay Clayton being someone from the SEC that overlaps quite a bit with big business. Putting someone like that in office is definitely a strategic situation. I can't imagine any non-prosecutor being at the helm, let alone, holding the role as even a bureau chief at a U.S. attorney's office without understanding the inner workings of how the office operates. So clearly picking someone like Jay Clayton was A, outside of the norm, and B, to me, would suggest that something more nefarious is going on.
What do you think once maybe Trump hopefully is voted out of office? What kind of safeguards and laws? Because, there is supposedly checks and balances, but this doesn't seem to be checks and balances with Trump. What kind of safeguards do you think we need for the U.S. Attorney's Office?
There's a number of things, Brad. One way to go about it is to possibly make it an election, right? We see the strengths and weaknesses of that, unfortunately.
Because the district attorney in Manhattan is elected. What is the
Correct.
strengths and weaknesses of that versus being appointed by the mayor, for example? You worked in the district attorney's office.
Yeah, the strengths and weaknesses is if you're elected, you should be the representative of the people. And that's one thing that both, Attorney Barr and also Berman, like there's a huge crossing of the line to where it seems as if Barr is the president's personal attorney, and that's not his role. So when you have appointments, there's always favors owed. There's always, some higher political authority that's kind of, using you as a puppeteer. But when you have an election, the issue with that, even though I do think in this situation it would be more beneficial, when you have an election, not everybody takes local elections as seriously as they should. And we still have, a jaded and biased panel when it comes to, who votes in local elections, and we don't necessarily get someone that's representative of the people. I think what could work is having just better information, having people nominated based on merit, maybe career prosecutors that have shown that they're, unethical and non-compromising. And then from there, have an election amongst, the most qualified individuals.
Did you ever deal with anything in your career, either on the defense side or on the prosecution side, that was just completely politically motivated, like what's going on here right now?
If I told you no, I'd be lying. And I'm actually really disappointed to even share this. And I won't say what government official's driver got a DWI when I was a young prosecutor. And I, picked up the phone, and it was that government official saying, "Hey, I'd really like some discretion on this case."
And what?
And this is, maybe a year out of law school, Brad.
Right.
And I was like, I need to go to a boss right away. You know me, I'm pretty independent.
I've never heard this. I've never actually even heard you ever tell me this before. This is the first time hearing this. I've known you for like 5-6 years already.
Yeah, I don't share it very much.
Right.
Luckily, I had a boss that was uber ethical. He's no longer there. I don't know if that's symbolic of anything, but he was someone that's been in the office, over 40 years, and his reputation was impenetrable. And I kind of got him on the case, and he did no favors. Unfortunately, I think it did strain his relationship a little bit with the powers that be, and it happens quite a bit. It happens a lot, actually. I also had a situation where, oh man, Brad, when I was a prosecutor, one of the judges that I used to appear in front of, his twin brother was arrested on the Upper East Side for punching a cab driver in the face. And this is a judge that I had to appear in front of all the time.
How did the twin brother go before the judge? The twin brother's judge?
He didn't go before the same judge, but I went before the same judge all the time on other cases.
I see.
There was nothing overtly said, but there was an influence that I should, resolve his case in a way that's not consistent with what justice calls for.
Right.
Ultimately, I did what I wanted, and I made an enemy of a judge that I probably still have, and it is what it is.
Well, thank you very much, David, for giving us a little enlightenment on what's going on, which, a prosecutor should have no politics involved whatsoever. And here we have a situation where multiple Trump entities and Trump associates are being investigated, and all of a sudden the U.S. attorney gets fired on a Friday night by William Barr.
What do you think would be a better structure, Brad, in terms of a federal prosecutor?
I agree with you. It should be voted by the people, and it should not be voted in the same year as the presidential election, so that the U.S. attorneys straddle presidents.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be having a new U.S. attorney coming in with the president, and there has to be some level of independence between the judicial system and the executive branch, and there has to be, and Congress has to take back some power from President Trump, who just grabs power and nobody does anything about it.
Yeah, he's really steamrolling his way, over a number of people in an unprecedented way.
When people say there's checks and balances, there's only checks and balances if somebody on the other side stands up and says, "Hey, wait a second." But if the other side, what are you doing? You can't do this. But if the other side says, "Okay, fine with me," then you're gonna grab the power all the time.
Yeah, it's the enablement versus accountability, right?
Yeah.
In this situation, we have a president that's enabled, and generally the way the system was built was for us to have someone that would hold him accountable.
Right.
But when we have the same party, and I was just literally reading about this today, Brad, about how the Declaration of Independence in the U.S. Constitution literally warned us against a two-party system and how dangerous it would be. If you go back and read that document, it tells us the perils of being in a two-party system, because we will never have someone that's truly representative of any of our views. You know, I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. There's no way of two candidates, there's someone that you strongly align with. But ultimately, you're going to have to force yourself to align with the person that your party puts forward, which causes a number of issues.
Yeah, but unfortunately, because the Electoral College, you can't have a third party.
That's true.
That seems to be the problem.
You can do plurality voting. If you look up, they do that in Maine for the governor's race, and how it works. Brad, is this, you know, imagine I was taking you to you asked me, I said, Brad, I'm going to Subway for lunch, and I asked you what you want, and you give me 5 options, and it's like, give me a meatball sub, and if they don't have a meatball sub, give me a tuna, and if they don't have a tuna, give me a chicken.
Right.
That's how they do the voting
right.
in Maine, and a lot of studies have shown that in doing that, you actually get to a candidate that a majority of folks want. Whereas if you look at the primary, the Republican primary, of all of the votes, you know how much Trump initially had? 5%. 5% in the primary of his own party.
Trump did not even win the majority of votes between him and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton won a majority of the votes in the 2016 election, yet Trump is our president.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Did you see the map of the far Midwest, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, etc.? Those 5 states, they have 10 electoral college votes, which is 10% of the country, and they only account for like 5 million total population between the 5 states combined.
Yeah.
Which we have more people than that in New York City.
That's right.
Yet we don't have equal representation, you know, relative to our electoral college votes, which is, you know, it's ridiculous. We really have to figure out a way to have our political system be more representative of what the people want.
Yeah, it's a problem. Thank you very much for coming in. Thanks for watching. For more Brad Show Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.